Chairman of the Pennichuck Special Water Committee, I find that due to the state of emergency declared by the governor as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, and in accordance with the governor's emergency order number 12, pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. Please note that there is no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously to this meeting, which is authorized pursuant to the governor's emergency order. However, in accordance with the emergency order, I'm confirming that we are providing public access to the meeting by telephone with additional access possibilities by video or other electronic means. To access Zoom, please refer to the agenda or the city's website for the meeting link. To join by phone, dial 1-929-205-6099, meeting ID 852-7466-9076, passcode 412838. Public may also view the meeting on channel 16. We previously gave notice to the public of necessary information for accessing the meeting through public postings. Instructions have been provided on the City of Nashua's website at www.nashuanewhampshire.gov and publicly noticed at City Hall and the Nashua Public Library. If anybody has a problem accessing the meeting via phone or channel 16, please call 603-821-2049 and they will help you connect. In the event the public is unable to access the meeting via the methods mentioned above, the meeting will be adjourned and rescheduled. Please note that all votes that are taken during this meeting shall be done by a roll call. I'll start the meeting by taking roll call attendance. When each member states their presence, please also state whether there's anyone in the room with you during this meeting, which is required under the right to know law. Alderman O'Brien, if you wouldn't mind.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Alderman Michael O'Brien is present. I can hear the proceedings and I am alone. Alderman at-large Laurie Wilshire.
Here, I am alone and I can hear everyone.
Alderman Richard Dowd.
Yes, I can hear everyone. I'm alone, practicing social distancing in accordance with the governor's order.
Alderman Skip Cleaver. Okay. Well, he might mark him absent at this time. He may be late. Alderman at-large Brendan Laws.
I'm here, I can hear you, and I'm alone.
Also, Mr. Chairman, also joining us this evening are Alderman Clee and Alderman Harriet Gathright. Also from Pennichuck Corporation is Larry Goodhue, CEO of Pennichuck, Don Ware, COO of Pennichuck, Thomas Leonard, Director of Pennichuck Corporation, and George Torres.
Thank you very much for that. I would just like to make a quick note to everyone before you speak tonight, just to make sure that you identify yourself so the person transcribing the meeting doesn't have any difficulty figuring out who's speaking. So that being said, communications.
There are none.
Unfinished business.
There is none.
New business resolutions.
Before us this evening is R-20-078, authorizing the Pennichuck Corporation to renew and extend its line of credit with TD Bank N.A. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to recommend final passage by roll call.
Thank you very much. Mr. Goodhue, would you like to speak on this?
Sure. And just also for the record, George Torres is the corporate controller, but also on the line from Pennichuck is John Bovair, who is our chief engineer, just so that you have that for the record. So the request here for approval on the renewal of our line of credit, this is our working capital line of credit, which is maintained at the Pennichuck Corporation level, which is the parent company of the consolidated group of companies. It is the company for which the city of Nashua is the sole shareholder and is the parent company of the 5 operating subsidiaries of the corporation. We have a working capital line of credit, which is available and accessible for usage by not just the parent, but by every one of those subsidiary companies for working capital needs. So this is not for capital projects. Capital projects are funded through our fixed asset line of credit and annual bonding or term debt events for the operating companies, most specifically Pennichuck Waterworks and Pennichuck East Utility. So this is a renewal of an existing line of credit that was put in place in 2017. Technically, it expired in August 31st of 2019, but the bank There was a change in our key relationship manager at the bank, and instead of going into a renewal at that time because they had some turmoil as far as staffing and stuff, they offered to us to extend it, to November, and then the extension went from November to March, and then March to July, and it is currently on extension through December of this year. That was pending this actual renewal. And so this renewal is based on a term sheet that was given to us by the bank with conditions and concerns at a level that are basically a renewal of our existing line of credit, which is a $4 million line of credit. It will renew and extend this line of credit through June 30th of 2022 and provide for that working capital backstop for the corporation and its subsidiaries in that entire time period.
Excellent, thank you. Any discussion from members of the committee? All right, will the clerk please call the roll?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Alderman Dowd,
Yes.
Alderman Wilshire,
Yes.
Alderman O'Brien votes yea, Alderman Laws,
Yes.
that's 4 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you. What's next? R 2079. Authorizing Pennichuck Corporation and Pennichuck Waterworks Incorporated to issue bonds and renew its fixed asset line of credit with TD Bank.
Yes, this is Mr. Goodhue speaking once again to give you some background about that. As I mentioned a moment ago, our working capital line of credit is for working capital needs. And then we fund our capital projects. So main installations, tank replacements, booster station upgrades, all the various things, replacement of our granular activated carbon in our water treatment plant. Those are all capital projects, buying trucks, buying, different things that are needed relative to the capital infrastructure to distribute and service our customers, distribute water and service our customers. We fund those capital projects during their acquisition and construction each year with our fixed asset line of credit at Pennichuck Waterworks. And then once a year, we bond in the month of April to basically refinance the monies that were drawn on the fixed asset line of credit in the prior calendar year, and then term that debt into a 30-year forward-looking debt, principally tax-exempt bonds. Some portion is usually taxable bonds as well, based on the regulations as to how much of cost of issuance can be included in the tax-exempt bonds. The bonding that we've done annually for the last 3 years, we're all subject to an overall approval that the city gave us, our board gave us, the PUC gave us, and the governor and council gave us, and the Business Finance Authority of New Hampshire, which was a $32.5 million facility for a period of 3 years. We issued our last set of bonds under that authority last April. This $57.5 million authority is the authority that we're seeking for the coming 5 years. So it's to issue bonds in April 2021, 22, 23, 24, and 25 for capital projects invested in 20 through 24. Of that $57.5 million, it is estimated that about $1.75 million of that will be for cost of issuance, and approximately $55.75 million will be for actual capital projects slated and projected for those 5 years that I just described. Tied at the hip with that is the fixed asset line of credit that we fund these projects in each year. Our fixed asset line of credit at PWW is currently a $10 million fixed asset line of credit. It was set to expire this year, and it has actually been extended to expire at December 31st of this year. And we've got a term sheet from the bank, not only to renew and extend that line of credit, but to elevate the size of that line from a $10 million line of credit to a $12 million line of credit. The reason for that is, and if you go all the way back to, I like to refer to the docket DW 11026, which was a PUC docket, and it is the docket where the PUC approved the acquisition of Pennichuck Corporation by the city of Nashua. And at that time, there was a forecast model put together by the investment bankers that worked with the city, forecasting for the next 30 years and showing that we will be investing $8 to $10 million a year in capital over that 30-year period of time, but it would grow organically with inflation and the cost of putting those projects together over the 30-year term. Well, one of the reasons to enlarge the facility from $10 to $12 million is to give enough capacity for that growth in this juncture in that overall time frame. As well, the cost of borrowing on the fixed asset line of credit, that capitalized interest is bondable. So under our current authorization of $10 million, only about $9.5 million is actually available for projects because there's about $500,000 for capitalized interest. This $12 million gives us now $11.5 million worth of capacity, roughly, relative to annual projects. And we can have some years where you may have a larger project that can push you over that $9.5 million cap. For example, the Kessler Farm tank is being constructed next year. That project alone is in excess of $3 million. So if you have a year where you have a project of that magnitude coupled with all of our normal infrastructure, you can have a year where you're bumping right up against that ceiling. So we wanted to make sure that we had adequate provision. So this resolution is about the renewal extension of the fixed asset line of credit and the capacity to do the annual bonding for the next 5 years in issuing those tax exempt bonds in support of our ongoing infrastructure and capital projects program at the company.
Thank you. Just point of order, I forgot to say that R2078 passed.
Okay, sorry.
Forgive me for that. I knew it all of this. So that being said, is there any discussion? Members of the board, committee? Alderman Dowd. You're on mute, Alderman Dowd.
Did I miss it, or do we have a motion to recommend final passage? I don't think I heard that.
We don't yet.
I'll make the motion for final passage of R20-079.
Thank you. Any discussion or questions from the board? All right, would the clerk please call the roll?
Alderman Dowd,
Yes.
Alderman Wilshire,
Yes.
Alderman O'Brien votes yes, Alderman Laws.
Yes.
Okay, you have 4 yeas, 0 nays, motion carries.
Thank you very much. Now, we're going to need a motion to take R2073 from the table.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to make a motion to take from the table R-20-073 by roll call.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Dowd,
Yes.
Alderman Wilshire,
Yes.
Alderman O'Brien votes yea, Alderman Laws.
Yes.
That's 4 yeas, 0 nays, motion carries. Before us this evening is R20-073, authorizing the mayor who enters into a pilot agreement pursuant to RSA 72:74 with Pennichuck Water Works Incorporated. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to amend R20-073 with the red line copy that was provided to us this afternoon by the legal department by roll call. And may I speak to my motion?
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This evening, the clerk received, and I think everybody else that is on the committee, the red line copy from legal. It seems to be that our corporate counsel and Mr. Goodhue and the Pennichuck Corporation have come to an agreement, and therefore R-20-073 as amended is all set for passage. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Excellent. No, we've discussed this in the previous meeting, but is there anything you'd like to add to this, Mr. Goodhue? You want to tell us what the amendments were?
Yes, and so I spent some time between our attorney and with Attorney Bolton going through the agreement. One of the things we wanted to make sure was that a pilot agreement that was being agreed upon between the parties was truly accomplishing what we needed to accomplish, and to make sure that it preserved the proper protections for a water utility relative to how our watershed protection lands would be taxed, and how that solar equipment could be taxed. So the red line versions specifically are defined to basically, I'm going to say, parse out the solar equipment itself to not be taxed as real property. To have the real property that they're being placed upon, which is a lease arrangement between us and New England Solar Garden, to continue to be taxed at the current regulations that exist in the state of New Hampshire. During the last year and a half, House Bill 700 passed, which basically redefined how utility property is valued within the state of New Hampshire, most specifically with water. We actually had done some testifying up north because you've got certain requirements by the Department of Environmental Services that require for sanitary radii and protections for water. And as such, even though that land can't be taxed under the current use standards, there was a language brought into that bill that in essence values it equivalent to current use because it is undevelopable land. And we wanted to make sure that those provisions were properly reflected in this agreement, which they were in the red line. And then because the financing for this is a 20-year financing, there is a provision in the RSAs in the state that if there is a financial dependency relative to an arrangement like this, such that it extends more than 5 years, the term of a pilot agreement can go past the statutory 5 years as long as it's got a financial and economic impact tied to it. So that was another red line that we wanted to make sure was reflected in here and that it was identified to the proper statute at the state level relative to that authority. And so those were the basic changes that we wanted made because we needed it to be economically in tune with what is being done, but also agreed upon between the parties being the city, ourselves, and now this New England Solar Garden so that this solar field can be installed and actually bring benefit not only to the company, but through the company to our ratepayers as far as, you know, a better source of energy and some cost savings that'll be passed through to ratepayers because of it.
That's excellent. I'm very excited about this and all things related to, you know, using green energy to help the city out. I appreciate that very much.
And I will tell you that Mr. Ware, who's on here, deserves all the credit. He's actually done the heavy lifting on this from day one. So just to let you know that.
I applaud you, Mr. Ware. Thank you. Thank you for your hard work. With that being said, are there any questions from the committee members? And the clerk, please call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Alderman Dow,
Yes.
Alderman Wilshire,
Yes.
Alderman O'Brien votes yea. Alderman Laws.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, 4 yeas, 0 nays, motion carries. Mr. Chairman, may I be further recognized for an additional motion?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. I would like to make a motion to recommend final passage as amended of R-20-073 by roll call.
Further discussion? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Alderman Dowd,
Yes.
Alderman Wilshire,
Yes.
Alderman O'Brien votes yea. Alderman Laws.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, there's 4 yeas, 0 nays. Motion carries as amended.
Thank you very much. New business ordinance.
There is none.
Remarks by the alderman. Not seeing any. No non-public. Alderman O'Brien, do I have a motion?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to make a motion to adjourn by roll call.
The clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Dowd,
Yes.
Alderman Wilshire,
Yes.
Alderman O'Brien votes yea. Alderman Laws.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, 4 yeas, 0 nay. Motion carries.
Thank you all. Thank you, Mr. Goodhue. It's always a pleasure.
Well, same here. Thank you for your time, everyone.
Yes, thanks very much.
See you
Have a
later.
good evening.
Take it easy.
Brandon, you do a good job.